Whoosh, 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 whoosh. We're live. We're live with Seth Diewold. Love it. Love it. Those that subscribe to the channel regularly know you very well from the Dynasty Roundtable and so many guest appearances. But those that, maybe only tune in to Podfather shows, they're like, "Oh, who's this guy?" It's kind of a weird dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in the big time now. Like, I made it. Like, here I am.
You officially made it.
Yeah,
you
I made the big leagues. Yeah,
as has Travis Kelce.
Hey, now, like that's according to Bill Belichick, it's the biggest catch he's ever made.
Wait, Bill Belichick said that?
I saw it on I think so.
That can't be true. That's amazing.
It was a headline on ESPN last night, so I'm assuming it's real. So yeah, it's his biggest catch ever.
It's pretty good though. It's a pretty good pull.
Sitting up there with
Mr. Kelce. I'm pretty proud of him.
I know. I mean, he's come a long way. He started with catching Kelce. You remember the reality TV show he was in?
Right.
And now he's got a couple Super Bowls. He's dating Taylor Swift. I mean, it's hard to imagine. I mean, this is like a comic book story, right? Like, you win Super Bowls and you date the most popular girl on earth who's also beautiful, right?
We're talking rookie breakouts today. Pretty exciting.
Oh yeah.
Is your Twitter handle, just for the audience, is it at Seth Diewold or something else?
Yeah, it's at Seth_Diewold. My name.
It's
my
underscore.
First and last name. Yep, I got the underscore in there. I set it up a long time ago. It just felt like that's what everybody was doing back in the day, was the old underscore.
I have fantasy_mansion, and I've regretted it ever since. But I couldn't get fantasy mansion without the underscore because it was some real estate website.
Yeah, That's just the cool thing people were doing back when I set up my Twitter account, so I just kept it.
I think actually I was doing it, and you assumed that I was the personification of cool in the industry. And so you were like, well, if the Podfathers got the underscore, then I should probably get the underscore. Meanwhile, I only got the underscore out of necessity. And then you learn that the people, they type everything in a string, and the underscore is not intuitive, and the underscore actually hurts you in the search results. So if I could do anything in life, it would be to go back and undo that underscore. It has hurt me so badly.
Darn.
It hasn't hurt me at all. It hasn't hurt me a bit. It's been great. Fantasy_mansion. Seth_Diewold on Twitter. Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce is really, really cool for football. Like, she is such a popular figure. She is so well known. I mean, her Q score is higher than any other football player, even higher than Tom Brady. You can understand that? She is more popular. She is a higher level celebrity than even Tom Brady. That's who Travis Kelce is dating. She is a worldwide global phenomenon, where Tom Brady is very well known in the United States, certainly very well respected among sports fans. But in terms of name recognition, I can guarantee you, literally with a B, billions more people know Taylor Swift than Tom Brady. This is who Travis Kelce's dating.
Yeah, his jersey sales went up big time, too. I mean, it's the Taylor Swift effect.
She's really famous. I mean, she's really famous. What do you think? She's maybe top 10 most famous person in the world.
She's got to be in the conversation at least. We rank these rookies. We can rank famous people. She's got to be in the top 10. Now that I think about it, she's got to be.
Insane how famous she is.
It's this summer. Like, I'm not, like, we were talking before we went live. I know I'm the worst person.
Whoa! We don't talk before we go live.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
How dare you? No, this is
we can't
the
pull
pre-show.
The
pre-show is all that there is. There's no pre-show. What? There's no pre-show.
Apologies.
This is the YouTube audience gets the livest live thing. They get everything. They get every syllable that we've uttered together, you and me. We weren't talking for 5-10 minutes before we went live. That's no.
That's my bad. That didn't happen. That must have, I'm still, I'm relatively new to this podcasting thing. So I'll take that down as a note for
Are you? How many podcasts have you done in the past year? You've done over 100 podcasts.
I'm not on the Podfather's level.
Well, no one's on my level. It's not like you do 100 podcasts in a year and me. It's like I'm like at the highest level. I don't know if anyone is there anyone? Is there a person? This is a question. This is an interesting question. Have I podcasted more than anyone else in all of fantasy football? Have I been present? Have I produced, hosted more fantasy football podcasts than anyone else in the industry?
I mean,
because remember, I'm also hosting shows throughout the off season. There's Decision Point, there's Mind of Mansion, there's Sonic Truth, there's all these shows that are happening throughout the offseason. So I'm averaging, and I have been averaging for the last 10 years, 3 shows a week. So 3 shows a week times 365, that's 1,000 shows a year. So we're talking about 1,000 times 10. We're talking about 10,000 episodes of fantasy football podcasts. Holy shit, I want to kill myself. I can't believe that that's true. I can't believe I've spent literally, they say 10,000 hours. I've done 10,000 episodes. So I am absolutely, by at least the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 metric, a fantasy football podcasting expert.
Oh, no question. I mean, you're not even counting all the first-person videos you did, all the shorts, like all these specialized videos. I mean, that's not even
guest appearances.
Yeah, you come on all these other player profiler shows we have. You were on the Dynasty Roundtable,
Sirius XM appearances, Roster Watch, Roto Baller, Roto Wire, all these shows. Is it?
Yeah, you're like. Go ahead.
Is it possible that I'm the best?
You're definitely.
It's kind of a crazy thing to like realize that you're the best. But I think
Taylor
that
Swift conversation.
Well, it's just a weird place to be where you're looking up and like, I'm the best. And we talked about it on the Sonic Truth show, just in terms of raw broadcasting ability, like the ability to deliver a message, right? The ability to promote a brand. We talked about this, right? Because Alan was like, man, Theo and I marvel at your ability to deliver these live reads, and people talk to me all the time. They pull me over. Like I'm walking down the street and people will pull me aside and say, does he really do those promos in one take? And I'm like, yes, Alan. It's an ability. It's how elite level athletes get to where they are. It's not just hard work. It's the intersection of hard work and raw God-given ability, right? I was born with this gift, and then I also invested the 10,000 hours. So when you are a hardworking, sort of diligent person with true perseverance and fortitude and tenacity, and you can combine that with an inherent skill set that you were born with from your DNA, you put those two things together, that's how you become the best. That's the only way. You can work every hour of every day on something where you don't have the inherent ability, and you will run into a hard ceiling on your potential, right? And if you have great potential, but you don't hone your craft, then you also will run into a ceiling. But I now know what it feels like to break through all the ceilings and get to the top of the mountain and be the best. It feels great. I can tell everybody out there, I hope everybody one day you become the best in your field. It feels terrific. It feels awesome. I feel great about it.
Oh, and this show, I mean, it's been one of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show for a long time. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it later, but it's what got me interested in working for Player Profiler. It's this show.
And you're great at what you do.
Well, I'm putting in my 10,000 hours right now. I don't know if I've gotten to 10,000 hours or not. I feel like with the YouTube side, not as much as the editing side. In the editing side, I've been doing that longer. The YouTube is more recent. So currently putting in the 10,000 hours there. We're getting better every day. We're climbing up that mountain, hopefully to be standing next to the Podfather on the top of the mountain, right up there with the Podfather, Taylor Swift, and then I'll get up there. Right.
So I've had some great experience. Do you even know can you name a Taylor Swift song?
Isn't it Shake It Up? Is that one?
Yes.
Shake It Off, or is it Shake It Off?
And you knew another one, didn't you, before the show? No, I mean this time that we talked that wasn't before the show.
That didn't happen.
You also mention something about the love story song?
Yeah, Romeo. Like
the Romeo song, right? You know you know Love Story, right? And this Shake It Off or whatever. I could tell you the best song from Taylor Swift is Style, and it's not a debate. It's not like, oh, let's talk about Taylor Swift songs and try to figure out which one's the best. No, I can tell you, just like I'm the best at fantasy football podcasting, Style is the best song. Do you know the song Style?
I think I've probably heard it before, but I never put two and two together that it was hers. I pulled up the lyrics. You've got that James
Dean daydream look in your eye. Oh, it's so good.
I got that red lip classic thing that you like.
Oh, yeah.
And when you go crashing
out
down
of style, we never go out of style. Oh, yeah. It's so good. It's so good. I had a great moment with my daughter. Her and her friend were in the back seat. I was driving to go sneaker shopping, and this song came on. We were blasting it, had the sunroof open, going down the boulevard, right? The sun was out. It was just an amazing moment. I look back, and they're like singing together and just having a great time. And then, of course, I remember it very well because I'm like, this is what it means to be a dad. This is great. Right. And then, and then it's so sad and dads know exactly what I'm talking about. So I brought it up. I was like, remember that time we were listening to Style in the car? And then my daughter was like, not really. I don't remember. Where were we? What? And I'm like, man. This is crazy. I remember this so well. Like, this is burned into my memory, this moment that we had. And you were just like, having fun with my friend. Didn't even really store that one away with any kind of care, Dad. But I'm glad you had a good memory out of it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That was good. I'm glad we had that moment that I don't remember, Dad. And I'm like, this is great. How is this possible? How could this be so one-sided? Damn it, parenting.
Yeah, I can
Taylor Swift. I love Taylor Swift. I will love Taylor Swift forever because of that moment. Right? Because that was just like a happy moment that I'll always have. Like you have like a list, a Rolodex of your index of happiest moments. And I was like, that's got to be it. That was a moment. She doesn't remember it. And, she's just rolling along. But I certainly do. So we should bring you on. We'll talk about what you do at Player Profiler when I bring you on. So I want to start the show. And so let's talk about how we'll bring you on. I really, you're really the king of content. Really, you're a king of content. I think that's a legitimate thing to say. You've been an editor for us. You're a podcast host. You manage the whole YouTube channel. You're a jack of all trades. All right. You're also the host of the Dynasty Roundtable show.
Yeah.
You're a major figure at Player Profiler in the underworld. You have a major role. Like if there was like an Avengers, like a superhero group, you would be one of this, like sort of out of focus, but not totally out of focus guys. Welcome to the Mind Dimension program! A superhero of the underworld, a king of content, a jack of everything, the host of the Dynasty Roundtable, one of my favorite people of all time. Here with me today, it is Seth Diewold. Talk to me.
Wow. I've been a fan of this show for so long. I've heard the famous Podfather intro, but to be on the receiving end of it, to be the one actually be talked about is, it's a surreal experience. I'm excited to be here. I can't thank you enough for having me on, for inviting me. When you did, I was like, oh my God. Like,
well, you can thank me enough.
Crazy.
You can thank me a couple times. That's probably enough. Maybe thank me twice. That's enough. I think that's thanking me enough.
All right. Two more times. Well, actually, yeah. So I thank you. And you were very kind to me in that introduction. I will say there are several people that I work with on a daily basis. Jason Alwine, Maddie Kiwoom. I mean, Theo Greminger, Billy Moves. The list goes on and on here.
You're arguing thank yous? Jesus Christ.
What do you?
Who do you think you are?
I hear.
What do you think you're accepting an Oscar here? You think this is like a podcast award you're accepting here? You've been on the show for a minute
already. Yeah, you said
play him out.
Can
we get the music to play you off the stage? Yeah, Jesus Christ!
Get him out of here already.
Start just get the orchestra fired up, for Christ's sake. We got the chat is saving us. The chat is saving us. Siha in the chat. DeAndre Swift or Taylor Swift?
Oh boy.
Right.
That's a good. I mean,
it's not even close. It's clearly Taylor Swift. This guy's a total jerk to even ask this question.
Yeah, it's like which Swift? Like they have the same last name.
He is a Swiftie. I mean, imagine if DeAndre Swift was a Swiftie. I don't know. I don't think he is. I really don't think he is. I really don't. I think of Swifties of being a little more happy-go-lucky, right? And from what I've heard, DeAndre Swift has a bad attitude. I think that Kenneth Gainwell Sr., probably a lot more likely to be a Swiftie than DeAndre Swift, ironically. But it's DeAndre Swift who's delivering all the explosive runs and scoring all the fantasy points and earning the bigger role, as he should. He's a phenomenal talent. There's no way Kenneth Gainwell could ever be the talent that DeAndre Swift is. But we're going to see. We're going to see between Kenneth Gainwell and DeAndre Swift for the next 5 years. We're going to see. This is such a gift that we have. Right? It's so rare that you have an experiment that's perfectly calibrated to answer a question. Right? So we have one guy that's 210 pounds with good but not great athleticism, right? And then you have another guy who is 210 pounds, who's more athletic, and is simply more gifted as a football player. And so here we have this perfect experiment, right? The conditions are set where the environment is the same. Right? The supporting cast is the same. The coaching is the same. You just have one player who's a lesser version of the other player in every way. Raw skill set, size, athleticism, down the board. Right? But we will see. We will see over the next 5 years who has the better career. Is it the guy that works hard, the coaches love, right? Who puts all that sweat equity into his profession, or is it the guy that nobody likes, who you can trade a day 3 pick swap to get, but he will melt your face any given Sunday with his ability? We're gonna see, because again, when I started Player Profiler, I would have assumed without question, 100 times out of 100, it's going to be Deandre Swift every time because it's football, and this is the place where bigger, faster, stronger always wins. And 10 years later, I've realized, oh no, it's how much you want it, how serious you want to be a professional that matters just as much as ability in this sport. And, I had to learn that lesson through Kevin White and Brashad Perriman, all the way through to Quentin Johnston and Zay Flowers to figure all this out. And now I feel very blessed to have figured it out. But now we have an extreme case. We have an extreme case with Gainwell and Swift. And then last night, what did we see? One guy had the 10 yards of carry. The other guy had the 3 yards of carry. It was just perfect. It was the perfect setup where it's like, okay, we're going to punish the player with less natural ability. We're going to give him chances where there's less upside for his touches versus the upside, the inherent upside of the touches that Deandre Swift is getting. We're going to give Deandre Swift the running lanes. We're going to give him the peach situation, the peach touches, and we're going to let Gainwell run out the clock. Right? And then now we're going to make it hard. We're not only going to set these guys up as the one with the ability running with the ones versus the one with less ability running with the twos. We're now going to let the guy with all the ability earn more touches. And you look at our Dynasty rankings, and there's no doubt about it, right? It's all happening. Like, Swift is back up. But is he going to be top 5 running back again? No, not after what we saw. The evidence that we've been able to collect on who Deandre Swift is will prevent him from cracking the top 5 ever again because of that trade that happened between the Lions and the Eagles. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I have written down in my notes, Swift is great. It's almost like you think about Philadelphia. I mean, they draft Jalen Carter. It's almost like the perfect place for Deandre Swift in hindsight, if we could go back in time, would be a place like Philadelphia with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, with a serious team that went to the Super Bowl. If there's a team that's going to inspire a player like Deandre Swift to get his together, it's a team like Philadelphia. So, and we're seeing that now. My question is
to take his role more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's like look at Jalen Carter. He looks unbelievable on the defensive line. It's that similar type thing. It's an organization that has their stuff together. And we'll talk about an organization that does not have their stuff together later in the show, my beloved Bears. This was the team. This is a perfect fit for Deandre Swift. And I actually think that, I know last night that, Swift had the explosive plays. I do think that Gainwell and Swift complement each other pretty well. And I do think Gainwell is a pretty good player. I know the stats last night, you referenced them, but Gainwell's going to get his touches. So Gainwell's great. Swift is
Gainwell's
great.
a great guy to flex.
Great.
Yeah, in deeper leagues, Gainwell's going to be a great guy to flex. He's going to get 10-plus touches every single game.
Absolutely.
They're going to be in positive game script situations. This is not the last game where they're going to have feeding Gainwell at the end of the game, and he could break off a long run. He's going to be active in the passing game, as will Swift. Throughout the preseason, they were playing Swift in a hybrid role as a running back receiver, and I'm sure they're going to break out some of those plays during the season, and who's going to be in the backfield for those plays? It's going to be Gainwell. So there's going to be plenty of Gainwell for the rest of the year. This is a buy low opportunity to get Gainwell, especially in Dynasty. That would be my focus. I would, watch the Deandre Swift lifetime value rise on the player profiler Dynasty rankings, as it will, as it will, right? But also capitalize on the distraction away from Gainwell.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. In Dynasty, these are the opportunities we're looking for. Everybody has their eye on Deandre Swift. We know that Gainwell's going to have that role too. I mean, he had 14 carries, same amount of targets last night.
But how could Swift doesn't miss any games, does he? Does Swift miss games? Does he sustain lower body injuries ever?
He's been known to miss some games for
Does
sure. Yes, absolutely.
Does? Don't really? Swift?
Yeah.
Unreliable? No,
Hmm.
crazy. Crazy talk. Crazy. But yes, this was the perfect landing spot. Jalen Hurts is the MVP of the league until further notice, because he not only is a great thrower of footballs, he's a great runner of footballs, and he's a great organizer and leader of football teams. That's why. Like, he fixes all knuckleheads. Bring me your knuckleheads, right? He's like the Statue of Liberty of the NFL, right? He's like the Statue of Integrity. If there was a Statue of Integrity in the NFL instead of a Statue of Liberty, it would be Jalen Hurts. And it's like he finds these incredible talents, these wayward talents, and inspires them to be the best they can be. That's what he does. That's as valuable as what he brings as a quarterback of the football team. That's why Jalen Hurts is so valuable. They're undefeated, aren't they? Undefeated? Have they lost a game? Have the Eagles lost a game?
No, they looked pretty good last night too.
I believe are they undefeated, Seth?
Yes, they are 3-0
I don't believe
now.
have they received a defeat yet? These
No.
Eagles, have they received a defeat yet?
They have not. They're undefeated.
I'm looking. There is one other team. I believe there is one other team. There is one other team that is undefeated in the NFC and one other team that is undefeated in the AFC. The one that's undefeated in the AFC scored 70 points last week. And then the other one in the NFC is the 49ers. And they are in the softest division in the sport. So that's who else is out there. By the way, there's a bunch of teams that are also 0-3. Do you know who's 0-3?
The Vikings.
There's more 0-3 teams than there are 3-0 teams.
Yeah. The Bears.
Right. Well, there's two in the NFC North, Bears and Vikings. Also, the Panthers are 0-3. That's not a surprise to anybody. And I think the big surprise is Denver. Denver and Minnesota being 0-3. This is just how probabilities work, man. Right? If you're the luckiest team in the league, if you're Minnesota in 2022, you're not allowed to be surprised when you're the most unlucky team the next year. Then it all cancels out. Right? In the long run, with enough games, right, all luck is factored out. So welcome to reality, Minnesota. This is what reality looks like. 0-3. 0-3. Cincinnati's 1-2. That's a surprise. Jacksonville's 1-2. The Colts are leading their division, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. And Green Bay's leading the division. That Green Bay and Detroit leading that division, that's actually not a surprise at all. A three-way tie at the top of the NFC South between Atlanta, New Orleans, and Tampa, not a surprise at all. 49ers leading the NFC West, not a surprise at all. So actually, it's funny. It's not a surprise. And what I loved about week 3 was that this was the first week where there weren't an incredible number of major injuries. Certainly we know Mike Williams tore his ACL. There were a handful of major injuries, but there weren't as many. And just look at the waiver wire options, right? There's not a Jerome Ford on the waiver wire. There's not 17 running backs that are week to week after week 3. We didn't have all the sloppy games. There were a bunch of games that hit the overs finally. So many of these teams are finally hitting their stride because they do not play in preseason. The first 2 weeks of the NFL season are chaos, right? Because no offenses start all their starters in preseason anymore. That's not a thing. It used to be, just for the kids, all those kids at home that are listening to Taylor Swift, just so everybody knows, it used to be that for at least the first quarter of every preseason game, teams would start their starters. It used to be before that, the first half. right? And now, like, all their key offensive linemen do not play. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that do not play a snap in preseason. Right? And so you're not allowed to be surprised when the first 2 games of the year, week 1 and week 2, are pure chaos. And now we're seeing what a normal week of NFL action looks like. Week 3 was a normal week of NFL action, and it felt great. It felt great. And a lot of the players that I was touting played well, and a lot of the players that I was fading played poorly. And so, of course, I'm going to think this is a normal week. And those weeks before, week 1 and 2, those were outlier. Of course, that's what I'm going to think.
Yeah, no, you said it. I mean, we had a lot of correction. I mean, the one thing that stands out to me as far as like, oh my God, is Miami obviously putting up 70 points against Denver.
But it's offense.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
You're right.
We finally got an offense that was operating at a high level of efficiency, and we didn't get that in week 1 or 2. But I think we're going to see more of that as the weeks go on.
Agree. Gosh, Devon Achane looks pretty good though, doesn't he? I mean, good Lord. I don't know if it's repeatable. I mean, Denver is just way worse than we thought they were. Clearly, I think that's just a lot of things happening all at once. Like, clearly, Devon Achane's more explosive than I thought he was. I mean, I did not see that coming. I mean, Maddie Kewum and I were on the waiver wire, or not the waiver wire show, the starter stream show, saying, like, what's Devon Achane's usage going to be like this week? We don't know. Like, we probably play somebody else. It's probably the smart move. Raheem Mostert's probably going to get the bulk of the touches. And then that happens. I mean, Raheem Mostert went off too, but clearly this Miami offense is humming on all cylinders, and this Denver Broncos team is clearly not as good as we thought. And Mike McDaniel, just he doesn't care. He's going to throw bombs up 56-13 to Robbie Chosen Anderson, and that's the way it's going to be. It's fantastic for fantasy football. And I think anybody
Devon Achane's usage went up as the game went along.
Yep.
Right? And had they not been up 50, it would have been more Mostert and less Achane. Right? And it's never a bad thing if you wait a week and see what a rookie who's earning more opportunities for the first time and see what they do, see what they are, see how they're used. That's never a bad thing in fantasy football, to let a guy show you what he is for a week and then go ahead and play him. Right? That's typically good advice. It just so happens that this was the week that the RB2 was called upon in the second half to salt the game away, and he just couldn't be stopped, and he just kept running for 67 yards for touchdowns. And it was interesting. It could have been so much more for Tyreek Hill, because he did have 9 catches. He went over 150 yards, but only the 1 touchdown. He could have had 3 or 4 touchdowns. It could have been just Tyreek Hill, 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was very close to being that kind of week. If Denver had been able to keep it a little closer, then that's what we could have seen. Because there were a few plays where it was at the last minute, Tyreek Hill getting tripped up, falling. He's down at the 9. Then they give it to Mostert for the touchdown. So that also, like, 9 for 157 and 1, that stat line for Tyreek Hill does not do him any justice, because he was the reason why the blowout happened. He was the number one reason why the blowout happened. They could not stop him. And it was impossible to see how bad this team's offensive line and team defense would be, how much they would decline. No one saw it. The regression of both anytime your defense and your offensive line simultaneously collapse, this is how you end up giving up 70 points and getting blown out. And now you're 0-3. This is not what Sean Payton would have wanted, right? You don't want to walk into an organization that is losing Bradley Chubb, is losing key offensive linemen, and they're not backfilling them with elite talent. And one of the reasons why is that they traded a first rounder for the coach himself. That's the funny part. He's like, man, I wish we had at least one more playmaker on defense, or I wish we had at least one more offensive lineman, one more quality offensive lineman that we could trust. Yeah, Sean, wouldn't that be nice? Maybe if Denver had their first round pick.
Yeah, the Denver organization, I mean, you go all the way back to them trading for Russell Wilson, right? I mean, it's just an organization that is so desperate to get back to winning ways in a division with the Chiefs, with the Chargers. And they're just they're just pressing all the wrong buttons. They're making so many crucial mistakes, right? With the quarterback trade in hindsight, obviously with the coach. I mean, you should never give up any sort of draft capital for a coach. That should be a no-brainer. And now their roster, I mean, they shouldn't. There's no way they should be this bad at all. Like, I don't care how bad your roster is. Giving up 70 points is an embarrassment. Like the embarrassment of all embarrassments. That's the only reason the Bears weren't like the headline, is because of the Broncos. Thank you, Broncos. So I don't see, and I don't really see this getting better anytime soon. I mean, maybe it gets better against Chicago this week. I mean, the good news for fantasy is Sutton's getting used. Marvin Mims looks exciting. Marvin Mims is getting targeted deep down the field. He had 5 targets this week. Marvin Mims
Mims is going to be great in 2024, but I can't trust him this year.
No.
You cannot trust a team like Denver. Okay, so think about it. Denver, they're down 50 by the end of the game. Russell Wilson didn't even have 40 pass attempts. Think about that. Okay, think about that for a second. They still ran the ball 19 times. Okay? And they were never in the game. So that's the ceiling for Russell Wilson. It's like 300 yards. This is not a good offense. And this is not an offense that can sustain, regular fantasy production from their wide receiver 3. No way. Right? So if Marvin Mims is only going to get 3 catches on 5 targets in a 70-20 blowout, then you can't start him the rest of the year as long as Jeudy and Sutton are healthy and they're playing. That relegates Marvin Mims to just a stash only, even though he's been putting up yardage, put up over 100 yards last week, right? Mm-hmm. He's been one of the most productive rookies this year. And yet there's a lot of other rookies like Jaden Reed and many others that I'd rather have for this year in season-long leagues, over Marvin Mims. But for Marvin Mims, for dynasty purposes, there's few receivers I would want more than Marvin Mims. But for this year, based on how bad the offensive line is and the defense is, this is what's going to save Courtland Sutton's season. This is the reason why Courtland Sutton's going to be a fantasy weapon. And the nice thing is, when I'm drafting with Billy and we're in the Dominator, and he's drafting Courtland Sutton, that's not a player that I'm excited at all about. And I'm like, man, why can't we draft someone like Sky Moore, someone that's a little more juice, a little more exciting? And Billy reminds me, he's like, listen, they're going to be, down in a bunch of games. Courtland Sutton is a starter. This is what his target share projects to be. This is what his target depth projects to be, his catch rate. When you actually plug in all these metrics and you run the projections, Courtland Sutton's the move here. I know that he doesn't have a sex appeal, but now we're seeing we're turning up the dials on the pass attempts because the defense is so bad, the offensive line is so bad. That's only going to help Sutton's going to help Jeudy. So especially Jeudy, only 81 yards, no touchdowns, 13 fantasy points last week. He's a buy low, and Courtland Sutton's a buy high. You don't want any member of this running team, this running game, and unfortunately, you don't want Marvin Mims, because in the face of bad teams, you maybe want the wide receiver 1, the wide receiver 2, and that's it, right, on these bad teams. Think about the bad teams around the league. You can build a case for, Adam Thielen. You can build a case for DJ Chark. Like look at all the 0-3 teams we talked about, right? Who can you build a case for that you could start with any kind of confidence? You can be like, okay, the number 1 wide receiver at the very least, maybe if the quarterback is at Russell Wilson's level, maybe the second receiver. And that's it. And that's where you draw the line, and then that's it. That's like a hard cap on who you could trust in fantasy football on these bad teams.
No, I completely, it's going to be inconsistent as far as, I will say though, Marvin Mims does serve a role in this offense that Judy and Sutton don't. He's clearly their deep threat, so, and I wonder too, I know maybe we're getting out ahead of ourselves, putting the cart before the horse, but there were rumors that one of these receivers was going to get traded before the NFL draft. The Denver is looking like a team that needs to retool.
Yes.
So if that happens, I do think Marvin Mims for that reason is a buy low right now. Like I think he's going to be great.
You think he's going to be great the rest of the season?
I think there's a chance he could be really good the rest of the season if some certain things happen. I think you got to go get him right now, though.
Seth, he is great, but he's not going to perform well for fantasy football without the targets. It's the same reason why I recommended putting Drake London on the block in Dynasty. It's like, hey, I love this guy, but in the context of this team, it's probably not going to work out. I mean, he is one of the very few number 1 wide receivers that has stud qualities. For instance, last year, his targets per route run, his target share, all in an elite tier, right? And he has alpha size, and he was a dominant college player. Checks so many boxes. But because they're run first, because the offense overall is anemic, and because Kyle Pitts is like a co-number 1 receiver, you can't start this guy with any kind of confidence. But most other receivers, whether it be Michael Pittman, whether it be even Garrett Wilson, if you have the size and the athleticism and the pedigree and the production history, if you have 1,000-yard seasons on your resume, those number 1 receivers are typically quarterback proof, where even a Garrett Wilson is going to find a way to get there. But Garrett Wilson is the firewall of a number 1 receiver that you can trust, but the ceiling is gone. The spike week potential is gone. But at least you can trust him to get you 10 fantasy points. That you can do. You can trust him to do that, whether it be with yak or with a touchdown. Somehow, some way, even with the worst quarterback, the worst starting quarterback in the league. I mean, the Jets just riding Zach Wilson as their QB2 heading into the season. If you watched Hard Knocks, you knew that was a bad idea. Right? You knew that they were overconfident in Aaron Rodgers' ability to stay healthy and overconfident in what they were seeing from Zach Wilson in preseason. He's scrambling for 40 yards, and he's looking competent, right, in practice and in preseason, and it was a terrible job of self-scouting. They could have gone out and found a better backup quarterback for Aaron Rodgers and upgraded. Also because they could trade Zach Wilson. If they're all in for this year, and if you're going to acquire Aaron Rodgers, by definition, you're all in for this year, then you can't be carrying a developmental quarterback as your second quarterback, your backup. You need to, in fact, you should have Mike White. Whoops! It's like the Dolphins are just owning every other team in the AFC with their roster moves, with their front office. It's like, we're going to trade for Bradley Chubb and then beat you with Bradley Chubb. Okay? We are going to steal the super competent backup quarterback that we know our competitor in our own division is going to wish they had. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just masterstroke. master stroke after master stroke, and it was negligent on the part of the Jets front office to just roll with Zach Wilson. This is hindsight. This is hindsight. No. I was saying this while watching Hard Knocks with my daughter. I said, listen, look at these two quarterbacks they have here behind Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be a problem at some point. I predicted a calf injury for Rodgers. Rodgers is going to pull his calf. He's going to miss a couple of games with a calf injury, hamstring. There were many, many seasons back through Aaron Rodgers' career where he's missed games with these lower body injuries. I didn't think it was going to be the whole season, but I was like, and they are going to regret just rolling with these two. Now Garrett Wilson's like you're hoping and praying for 15 fantasy points.
Yeah, it's the upside is definitely capped, and they're going to have to do something about it because this defense, I mean, with Aaron Rodgers, and I'll admit it, like this defense was a lot better than I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be good. Like they looked elite that first week against Buffalo, and it would be the good news for Garrett Wilson is I think they are going to trade for a quarterback because they kind of have they got to be kicking the tires on Jameis Winston. They got to be kicking the tires on just somebody like.
Well, they can't get Jameis Winston now. The Saints need Jameis Winston.
That's true.
It's too late. It's too late. The time to trade for Jameis Winston was a month ago.
Yeah,
right.
Jacoby Brissett, maybe somebody like that. Like
the fact that they let Washington get Jacoby Brissett and they weren't in the bidding for Jacoby Brissett is the mistake. Is the great error. And I talked about this also with the Chargers. That's the Chargers' great weakness also, was that they were going into the season with Easton Stick as their backup quarterback. What are you doing? Right behind Zach Wilson is Tim Boyle. Okay?
Yeah. what
are you doing? It's just it's negligence. That's just all it is. It's organizational negligence. Now, you look at the polar opposite organization on the other side of the spectrum where they're just making all the right moves. So you would think maybe the Eagles have some weakness, right? So it's got to be some weakness. What if they lose Quez Watkins? What if they lose their wide receiver 3? Then surely, if maybe they don't have the depth at wide receiver. That's got to be the big weakness of the Eagles. There's got to be some weakness, right? Mm-hmm. So Quez Watkins misses week 3, and you look up, and guess who's really good at football, and we've known he's really good at football this whole time, is Olamide Zaccheus. Olamide, he's commanding targets just like he did in Atlanta, just like he did at Virginia, right? He's a close to the line of scrimmage guy, but he does have the speed to get deep when called upon. He's a great joystick-type wide receiver to have in your wide receiver 3 spot. You know, he's not someone you want to trust with any kind of heavy target share. That we learned from his time in Atlanta. But as a rotational receiver, he's perfect. He's perfect. He's like a much more athletic version of Greg Dortch in the best possible way. Right? And so he comes available, and it's those micro moves, it's those subtle moves down the depth chart, down the roster, where Philadelphia is also winning. I don't see how anyone can beat Philadelphia. If their attention to detail is going to go all the way down to Olamide Zaccheus on the depth chart, then this is an invincible franchise.
Yeah, I mean, that's what good organizations do. That's what they do. It's not just about the guys at the top. It's about how can we get better at every single position, even all the way down to the practice squad. And when you can just have a plug and play guy, I mean, some franchises use injuries as an excuse, right? And I would guess that if you talk to Howie Roseman, he's probably not going to use injuries as an excuse ever, right? Because if injuries are the problem, then I didn't build enough depth with this team. I didn't scout enough of these players like Olamide Zaccheus that can fill in and catch a touchdown pass on Monday Night Football from Jalen Hurts in a critical situation. We need guys like that. We need guys that can come in and fill that void. Is that hat a little tight on you? Is it shrunk a little bit? Or
This looks like it hurts, this hat, doesn't it?
It kind of does. It kind of does.
It does. It hurts to it. I grew up as an Eagles fan to lash out against my father, my grandfather, big Patriots fans. I wanted to be different. I had an Eagles starter jacket. I had a bunch of Eagles hats, and my mom found these Eagles hats in a bin. See, what happened was once the Patriots started winning, then I decided I was a Patriots fan. This is what kids do. This is what kids do. But when I was a younger kid, I was a big Eagles fan. Randall Cunningham, that man. People, that's a name from the archives right there. But this hat that I have is a fitted hat. It no longer fits me because my head has since grown since I was a kid. But this hat is actually a completely amazing and incredible Eagles hat. It's got the PE logo on the front with the wings over the E. It's really awesome. And it is New Era. So it's a New Era. It's got you can see the old New Era tag, right? The old New Era logo, the original New Era logo. So this is an elite hat. This is a very elite hat. I have always had a special place in my heart for the Eagles based on my childhood love of the team. It's part of my affinity for Gainwell. And now Zaccheus. I'm a big Olamide Zaccheus fan, right? What about Jacksonville? Jacksonville had high hopes. Jacksonville thought they had basically the Eagles South, right? Philadelphia South. We got Trevor Lawrence. He's pretty much Jalen Hurts, and we're rolling. We're gonna crush everyone in our division. We're gonna be pencil us into the playoffs. And then you look up, and they're in second place. They're tied with the Texans. And there's, it's not the fault of the receivers. They got a lot of good receivers there. But it just so happens that I think they have too many good receivers. There is a cliche that I will not use that many people in fantasy love to use when there are too many wide receivers that are good, but none of them are great. So none of them can really command any kind of significant target share, like a 25+% target share, to get into that wide receiver one tier. Can't hit that threshold because there's just too many good receivers and they spread the ball around. There's a particular cliche that is often bandied about in fantasy football that I will not say. But if I was to use that cliche and say that there are too many of this to give
cooks
food
in the
to,
kitchen,
right? If there's too many holes where food goes into to give food to on this particular team, the Jaguars, this would be the team. And if Calvin Ridley were a true alpha, like an A.J. Brown, then it wouldn't matter. Then he would have his weeks with his 14 targets and his 150-plus yards and a touchdown, and he would spike week like crazy, but also be super reliable to give you big volume and production week in, week out. And then he would be classified as a CeeDee Lamb level stud receiver. But he's not. And I know that because one week it's him, it's Calvin Ridley. The next week it's Christian Kirk. The next week the leading receiver is Evan Ingram. And then who knows, the next week is going to be Zay Jones.
It's kind of comical. I was looking at the stats in preparation for this show, and you look at the numbers for some of these Jacksonville receivers, and I'm not making this up. Calvin Ridley, 173 receiving yards, a touchdown. Christian Kirk, 173 receiving yards, a touchdown. Evan Ingram, 173 receiving yards, no touchdown. I'm not joking. It's up on ESPN.
That's a statistical fluke. You're making it up, though. That's not just a fluke. That's beyond fluky. That's a made-up stat.
It's go to ESPN. Look, it might be, I don't know, it might be wrong, but the targets, if you want to look at the targets too, 26 targets for Ridley, 23 targets for Kirk, 21 targets for Evan Ingram. It's like, how's the, like, you're right though. How's the receiving yards possible? Like, how's that? That's, I don't like, you're right. It's like, if Ridley were this guy that we all thought he was going to be, I mean, the training camp was
not
amazing.
We all. Easy with the we all.
So, sorry that some people thought he was going to be. Yeah, he would. I get it. Christian Kirk's good. Evan Ingram's good, but he would be commanding more targets in this offense as a clear alpha receiver. And right now, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram are right on his heels, and literally they all have the same amount of receiving yards, 57.7 receiving yards per game, each and every one of them. So it's I don't know how that's possible, but it's comically. And this is an offense that's not really clicking on all cylinders. They only put up 9 points against Kansas City. They only put up 17 points last week against the Houston Texans team that dropped 37 on them. I mean, through 3 games, Trevor Lawrence, 64% completion percentage, 730 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 INTs, 59 yards rushing. I mean, this is a quarterback that was going pretty high. This offense is in a funk right now. That's pretty legitimate. And the Texans that are in their own division, that, you know, they have a new coach, new quarterback, just wiped the floor with them in week 3. So they better get it turned around quick.
We have the Fantasy Football Ninjas in the chat. Fantasy Football Ninja in the chat. He's saying, what do we do? What do we do about Rachaad White? What do we do? Do we hold? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do about Rachaad White? He only had 8 fantasy points against the Eagles. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? He's coming off a top 10 week the week before. What are we going to do? He's only getting 17 carries a game. He's dominating all the touches. No other running back is even remotely involved. What do you mean, what are we going to do about Rachaad White? You're going to enjoy the Rachaad White usage. All that matters is the usage. You love the consolidated target distribution, that it's Evans and Godwin and then White, and you love that White is getting all the carries. The touchdowns will come. The breakaway runs will come. He has great speed and burst. That's all coming. They just played the Eagles, a team no one can run against. Okay? And then the game before that, a softer defense, he went off for 20-plus fantasy points and was a top 10 running back. You buy him. He's a buy low, if it's even low. If anyone is panicking because, he only produced in 1 out of 3 games, even though the usage was there, it's literally the most straightforward hold or buy in fantasy football. Just looking at the usage of the running back, it's the most straightforward thing. I'm embarrassed that I even have to address this, that our audience is so unsophisticated, or that a single member of the audience would even have this as a concern or a question, knowing what the usage pattern has been for Rachaad White himself and the team overall, is embarrassing to me. And now I'm regretting that I even mentioned it and brought this up, because as I say it out loud, it is so clear and obvious that I've just wasted the audience's time. And I'm sorry.
I can't add much more to that. I mean, there's really nobody to challenge him either. I believe Chase Edmonds just went on IR. So now it's Sean Tucker, who's the backup.
But what are we going to do, Seth? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Except wait another week and keep starting him, of course. Oh, what other options do you have, by the way? What is it? What am I going to do? I better bench him. Bench him for who? For what? Like, you think there's... What? Bench him for Saquon Barkley? How about that? You want to do that? You want to bench him for Dameon Pierce? You want to do that? Right? What are you going to do? Right? You're going to pick someone up off the waiver wire? Who are you going to bench him for Miles Sanders? What are you going to do? Oh, yeah. Right? What are you going to do? Who you got? You're going to play Zach Charbonnet? Is that what you're going to do? What you're going to play Ezekiel Elliott? Like, what do you think? Name a guy, right? Who are you going to play against? Tyler Algier? Like, who? Explain this. Explain. Tell me. Kareem Hunt? Who? Somebody give me a name. Who are you going to play? Right? What? Tell me a player. Oh, Cam
Swift.
Akers? Who? So someone give me a name, please. Who is a reasonable Joshua Kelly? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What's the problem? Right? Guys that were drafted around him, you're starting or with him, like Kenneth Walker, right? Or James Conner, for example. Or you're just straight up playing him over other guys who were drafted in that same area that he's been outproducing, or where he's healthy and they're not. And maybe you were lucky enough to get Jerome Ford, and then that would be a debate. Yes, that would be a debate. It's literally one guy. You're gonna play Najee Harris over him? Like what? Give me a name. Javonte Williams? Give me a name. That's a reasonable. I can only think of one. Right? I can think of one. Jerome Ford would be the one guy. Jerome Ford. You're not going to play Alvin Kamara over him. You got to see how Alvin Kamara is going to be used. You can't use it. You can't play Alvin Kamara over him yet. You got to wait a week. So now you're down to one dude. There's a possible one dude. Right? I'd play him over Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'd play him over Derrick Henry. I'd play him over Dameon Pierce. I'd play him over a lot of guys that were going before him in drafts. So what the fuck are you complaining about? What the fuck are you complaining about? He's healthy, and he's playing better than most of the players that he was drafted around. So shut up. Shut up. God. What about Dameon Pierce, though? I actually think Dameon Pierce is a buy low. I never think that I'll be in a position to get some of these players like Jerry Jeudy, right, or now Alexander Mattison recently. Like last week, everyone's like, can't believe the Podfather's recommending adding Alexander Mattison. He's dust. And it's like, I don't think he is, actually. I look at the usage. I know he had 2 bad games in a row, right? And by the way, that's the same number of bad games that Rachaad White has had. But the usage tells me that they trust him and he's going to be scoring touchdowns and catching a bunch of passes the rest of the year. So maybe just on principle, add him, trade for him, whatever it is. Go get him. Yeah, but I can't believe he likes Madison. I don't know. I like value. I like players that don't cost anything but will actually produce. It's funny how that's a guy you want. So, yeah, I think Dameon Pierce is now in that category.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a tenet of Dynasty that everyone should be aware of if you play Dynasty. These player values shift all the time. Sometimes there's a good reason for it. Sometimes there's not a good reason for it. So when you talk about Dameon Pierce, for instance, I mean, there's really nobody that's challenging his opportunity. I mean, Devin Singletary's there, but he's on a good offense. I know the efficiency hasn't been there, but this is an offense with CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, Nico Collins. It's going to be able to move the ball. They just dropped 37 points, like we said. And if there's a situation that you want to attack, I mean, people act like, oh yeah, we could just go out and trade for Saquon Barkley. It's like, well, that's going to cost a lot. Like Dameon Pierce is now in this zone where some people are potentially giving up on him. He's disappointed people. Alexander Mattison, they get Cam Akers in Minnesota. Oh, it's just automatically going to be Cam Akers' show, right? It's just, like Cam, they gave away Cam Akers, to the Rams did. So like,
no,
we can't just automatically
it's like the Deandre Swift rule.
Exactly.
If you're going to give away a player for day 3 capital, then we can never forget that in Dynasty. Like we're never going to forget that this trade happened, right? That the league doesn't value Cam Akers at all. That's very important to know. That's very important for his Dynasty value. The league values Dameon Pierce more than that, a hell of a lot more. And I'm talking about getting Dameon Pierce in seasonal leagues more than anything. I think that there's still plenty of residual value there in Dynasty. I think people believe that he's the long-term solution for that team at running back. I'm not even so sure about that, but I do see a buying opportunity for Dameon Pierce right now, especially in season-long leagues, for sure. What about the Bears? The Bears are in free fall, but like Garrett Wilson, you can have a quarterback production apocalypse, and yet you look up and the primary option in the passing game, whether it be DJ Moore, whether it be Garrett Wilson, they're getting their touchdown, they're getting their 5 catches. Right? That's what they're doing. And so that's what we're seeing with the Bears. Also, I will say there's this rush to get Tank Dell. Understandably, I get it. We just did the waiver wired show. By all means, go get Tank Dell. But also Nico Collins. Nico Collins is out there running the routes. And by the way, so is Rachaad White. Yes, Rachaad White is getting the carries, but he's also running 20 routes a game. So it may, if a running back is getting the carries, getting the routes, getting the targets, then that will equate to fantasy points over the course of a season, right? Nico Collins, same thing. He's the one running the routes. He just didn't produce last week. So now all the attention is distracted. Like, oh my God, what about, should I be stashing Devin Singletary? Sure. Of course you should be stashing Devin Singletary. This is an elite offense. CJ Stroud is awesome. Should have been the one overall, right? Should have been the first pick in the draft, which is what I was saying all offseason. Why anyone was drafting Bryce Young over CJ Stroud in Dynasty, why the Carolina Panthers traded up for a midget quarterback who is coming from a system that produced Mac Jones. Someone explain this to me. Like no one could explain it, right? So CJ Stroud is a stud, and for that reason, they can support up to 3 receivers in that passing game, not just one, Tank Dell, but also Nico Collins. Nico Collins had 2 consecutive games with well over 100 air yards. He's going to have a bunch of big booming performances the rest of the year, but there's now this current narrative that the clear number 1, the alpha there in that passing game, is the 5'5" Tank Dell. So when I see that, I see an opportunity to get Nico Collins. When I see so much debate about should I pick up Devin Singletary, I'm thinking, okay, I need to get Dameon Pierce, right? On the other side of the world, of the globe, of the universe, are the Bears, where there's this one guy, DJ Moore, who can find a way to scrape together some fantasy points, and then it's just a void after that.
Yeah, unfortunately, all the hopes that I had for my beloved Chicago Bears coming into the season, I mean, when I wasn't expecting them to beat the Chiefs, obviously, but when you're an NFL team and this is year 3 for the quarterback, and we could probably talk about the quarterback later, this was, I mean, there's no more excuses, man. There's no more excuses. You got DJ Moore. He's a great receiver. You upgraded the offensive line. No more excuses there. This is year 3, man. Year 3, and I watched that entire game from start to finish with Chiefs fans as the only Bear in attendance at this party. This is how big of a Bears fan I am, right? I knew it. Like, there's always got to be that guy at a party, and I'm willing to be that guy. It's fine. I'm a sicko Bears fan, right? So it was painful to watch. And it's not like Justin Fields didn't have time to throw. He had time to throw, right? The Kansas City defense, I think it's an underrated defense, but to not put up any points, right, until late in the second half to DJ Moore. I mean, this is, and to be fair, it's not just a failure on Justin. It's an organizational failure all around. Coaching, ownership, GM. It's not great, man. It's like clearly every part of this franchise coming into the season had too much hype. But the good news is DJ Moore is still going to score fantasy points because, like we saw against Kansas City, he's going to get those opportunities because he's DJ Moore, and the Bears are going to be in comeback mode all season long. And they're a contender for
Is Justin Fields going to be the quarterback next year?
Likely not, because they have, well, here's the problem. They're bad. They have their own pick. They also have Carolina's pick, and Carolina's not good either. We know that this quarterback class is good, not just Caleb Williams, but Drake May and company, right? The Bears are going to have a very tough situation. And like I said, this is year 3. And we're seeing CJ Stroud come into the league and do what he's doing already, right? With Justin Fields' passing pedigree at Ohio State, he should be further along than he is right now. You can blame the coaching if you want to, but if you're the player, you have to find a way to be successful, to just overcome, put in the work. Like, and I'm not questioning his work ethic at all. What I'm saying is the results on the field do not match what our expectation was coming in. And like I said at the beginning, and this is painful for me to say, because I was the biggest Justin Fields fan. We saw it last year. I mean, he put up back-to-back 40-point games. It looked like a fantasy superstar. Looked like the franchise quarterback there for a minute. But this is not even close to being competent, what we saw against Kansas City. Maybe he can get right against the Broncos that just gave up 70 points to the Dolphins. If he doesn't get right there, then I don't really know what to say, right? But I think you just have to hold your breath as a dynasty manager. I think you just have to hope for one of these games because you're selling them for 50 cents on the dollar right now, right?
He was hyped up in Dynasty, man. He was hyped up in Dynasty, and just not the type of player that I target in Superflex and 2 QB leagues. Happy to draft the hell out of him in single quarterback leagues, but I'm in mostly 2 quarterback and Superflex Dynasty leagues. And so I have very little Justin Fields for that reason. I'm much more interested in pocket passers. In the Kirk Cousins archetype is much less risky, where it's just the price you have to pay for these super mobile quarterbacks, the Anthony Richardsons and the Justin Fields archetypes in 2 QB leagues, in 2 QB dynasty leagues, these guys that are younger than 25 years old that can rush for 1,000 yards with big arms, they get steamed up, man, all the way into the first round sometimes of startup drafts, and I just can't do it. I can't do it. Cannot do it. Because this outcome is out there. This outcome, and now next year, who knows, right? They're going to have 2 top 10 picks. We know they're going to have 2 top 10 picks in the NFL draft.
They might have the number 1 overall pick.
That's right. We've been talking about this as the theory of the case, how Kyler Murray gets traded, right? Here's my theory, Your Honor, on how I believe Kyler Murray gets traded. And it's predicated on the Cardinals losing out, getting a top pick, having extra picks because they got a pick from the Texans. And it didn't occur to me that the entire case for why Kyler Murray is going to be a Falcon next year, right? And that Drake May or Caleb Williams is going to end up as a Cardinal actually applies better to the Bears. It could still happen, man. It's a long season. The Cardinals could still end up losing more games than the Bears or the Panthers. But it's now possible that both teams draft rookie quarterbacks next year, that we have top 10 quarterbacks going to both the Cardinals and the Bears, and that Fields and Murray are on different teams in 2024. One of them has to be a Falcon. One of them. And they will both look great in a Falcons jersey. Anand and Dury wanted Justin Fields to go to the Falcons years ago in the draft. Right? But they went Kyle Pitts. He's like, they should have taken Justin Fields. Now, that's an interesting question. If they could redo the draft, do you think the Falcons would select Fields over Pitts? If they had one option, if you could get in a time machine, you go back in time, and you could make one change to one draft pick, and there's only one choice. You could either have Pitts or you can change it to Fields. Would you do it?
If I'm the Falcons?
Yeah.
Oh, they'd take Penei Sewell now.
No, you're not allowed. That's not the choice. Of course you would take Sewell, which is who I said that everyone should be taking. You know, whether it be the Dolphins, the Falcons, all those picks in that range should have been just circling Sewell. And if not Sewell, then another offensive lineman, right? Offensive lineman from Northwestern. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Get an offensive lineman. Get a stud tackle through the door. That's what you need. But, okay. Who do they pick?
Process-wise, I mean, you have to take the quarterback over a tight end in the top 5.
But they didn't at the time.
I know.
And now we have one guy who had a breakout season as a rookie, Kyle Pitts, and it's looking more and more like Justin Fields is a bust.
Yeah.
And you're saying, but now they would still, because it's a quarterback, they would go back and change the pick?
Process-wise, I mean, they're not using Kyle Pitts right now anyway. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, obviously there were so many better options on the board. Jamar Chase was on the board, right?
That's right.
If you want a playmaker,
Rashawn Slater was on the board. Wait, that's right. Jamar Chase was on the board?
I think so.
Oh my, that's right. I think they were picked back to back. They were picked back to back. I think it went Pitts, Chase, Waddle,
right? Yeah.
Then Sewell.
Yep. And Dan Campbell was so excited to get Penei Sewell.
Oh,
it's like in hindsight, if you're gonna run this wing T offense around Bijan Robinson in the future, like, you know, why didn't you just get the offensive tackle?
Oh, man. Yeah. So if you could recast the die, redo the draft, I think most teams would go Chase, or Sewell, or Slater. Those would have been the picks. Those would have been the best picks. Wow. That's crazy. But yes, so now we can. Now it's both the Fields and Murray watch for the next 7 months. That's all we're just gonna be locked in on that scenario, that situation. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So Zay Flowers, 10 more targets this past week. Rashad Bateman injures his hamstring. I will say it. Rashad Bateman is dust. It's too bad. We're now 3 years in, and the guy has lost all of his explosiveness, and his lower body betrays him. Every time he tries to put together more than 2 games consecutively, he breaks down. So if the guy's going to break down and he's not going to be explosive, he's not going to command targets, he's not going to be efficient, what is he? He's a 0. He's a 0. So this is one of the heartbreaking scenarios of my time in this business, is what has happened to Rashad Bateman. But, right, the silver lining is that Rashad Bateman had to die so that Zay Flowers could live his best life. And oh, baby, is Zay Flowers blooming.
I mean, yeah. That's a good one. That's I have to take. This is what you get when you have your 10,000 hours plus and 10,000 shows.
10,000 shows.
10,000 shows. The flowers are blooming. I mean, 25 targets already for Zay Flowers, and that's not counting his use in the rushing game. I think he's got like 4 or 5 rushes too.
Oh God.
So it's like, if you're unconvinced by Zay Flowers right now, I mean, I still think like people. And I think you're very apt to move off of Rashad Bateman. It's very commendable because I think you're right. It's like just like with Justin Fields. It's like like we should see something by now. Like, you know, like we should have seen it. Greatness often just slaps us in the face, right? Sometimes, you know, it takes some time to develop, but most of the time it's just like, there it is. Oh my God. And that's what we're seeing with Zay Flowers.
It's the same thing with huge penises.
Yeah, that's exactly the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, there it is, Zay Flowers, and he is clearly the best wide receiver on the team right now. I know Andrews is there, but there's still an opportunity to buy. I mean, he's still probably not properly valued in redraft, I mean, in all formats. So I mean, he's gonna be the leading target getter at the wide receiver position for the Ravens for the rest of the year. He's amazing, and I couldn't be a bigger fan of his.
Can you imagine if the Chargers had drafted Zay Flowers?
Yeah.
They needed to create a sort of succession plan for Keenan Allen. He's now in his 30s. So, and if they didn't like Jordan Addison, understand, you don't like Jordan Addison for whatever reason, you were worried about his lack of production in his senior year, his final year at USC, his final junior year. Okay, that's fine. Then go Zay Flowers. What you don't do is you don't draft Quentin Johnston. You don't do that. But now we have another great experiment in front of us where we can see now what Quentin Johnston does when the target competition has been removed. The Mike Williams target competition. He's the heir to Mike Williams, right? We want the next Mike Williams. We want the succession plan for Mike Williams. That's Quentin Johnston. Okay, fine. That's okay. That's the spin. Fine. Let's see how he does. Right now, he's going to be in there in most 3 receiver sets. We'll see. I'm excited to see it. I haven't been this excited. I'm excited. This week 4 is a big week for my takes.
Yeah. No, we're going to see it. I have a sneaking suspicion we're going to see a lot of Josh Palmer, but we'll see.
That's right. Yeah, Josh Palmer is your waiver wire ad just based on opportunity. That's it. Yep. Just based on opportunity. And, I've got Joanna Jackson's in the chat. She's saying that Burks looks like dust as well, Traylon Burks. And that Fusu Vu really screwed me on that one. But Fusu Vu really screwed people on Quentin Johnston also. Fusu Vu was touting Quentin Johnston, and I was insistent on Twitter that Fusu Vu was wrong about Quentin Johnston, and they didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and I will debate Fusu Vu on Quentin Johnston, but now it's not even a debate. We'll see what happens. Even if Quentin Johnston somehow, some way produces some fantasy points in week 4, I'm happy to debate Fusu Vu on Quentin Johnston. And yes, he was very bullish. He was very bullish on Burks as well as Quentin Johnston. And so this has not been a good season for Fusu Vu, not at all. And us Zay Flowers fans, us raging Zay Flowers fans, have had a great year. The question, though, now is how quickly can you pivot from Jackson Smith-Njigba is the clear wide receiver 1 in this class to now it's clearly Zay Flowers? That is the big question that I have.
Yeah, I think we need to see some more out of JSN. So it has only been 3 games, and he is getting targeted around 5. I think he's got 19 total targets, around 5 targets a game.
Okay.
We should have known.
But he hasn't been good. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't been any good.
Yeah, we should have known. Like it's especially, I think he's like the lowest average depth of target receiver in the NFL, or he's down at the bottom too. So he's not getting the targets that we want. But we should have known, though. I mean, DK Metcalf was always going to.
We should have known. What do we should have known? This guy was an epic producer. He outproduced both Olave and Wilson in 2021 at Ohio State. How could you have known that he wouldn't be the best?
No, I mean, like in this offense, DK Metcalf is the clear alpha. Like it was going to be tough.
Are you saying that you think that potentially Jackson Smith-Njigba is better than Zay Flowers? It's just that he has much more target competition in Seattle, and that's the thing that's holding him back, and that's what's propping up Zay Flowers? You're not saying that.
Well, I am saying that DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are really good receivers, and that we probably should have, like the world where JSN was getting drafted ahead of Tyler Lockett sometimes was probably like we should have known better there. I'm still very bullish on JSN.
I did know better. I wasn't drafting him over Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I'm just telling. This was happening like in drafts all over the place, and underdog, and some home, like it was happening, and it shouldn't have, right? I still think JSN has the possibility of being the best wide receiver in this class. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. Tyler Lockett is 30 plus, right? So he could fill that role eventually. Like I think the process is good in Seattle. I'm still a big fan of JSN. You said it. He outproduced Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave in college. I think we need to give it time. But Zay Flowers, man, is making the most of his opportunities right now for sure. So I think you can start to have that conversation, but it is a 1-2 for sure. It's Zay Flowers.
Well, obviously
JSN.
It's a 1-2. It's clearly a 1-2, but soon the question is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba versus Jordan Addison, because Jordan Addison has been producing, right? He has target competition in the form of Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. And yet he's been producing week in, week out. He's been giving you 10-plus fantasy points. Jackson Smith-Njigba is not doing that. Also, Jordan Addison was an epic college producer. Both he and Jackson Smith-Njigba are two of the best receivers in college football in 2021. So it's not like Jackson Smith-Njigba was like blotting out the sun compared to Jordan Addison in 2021. That's not what happened, right? They were both incredibly dominant that year. And then last year, the most dominant receiver in college football was Zay Flowers. Okay? So it's not like any of these three came into this season with like a clear and present lead, dominant position established over the other two guys. Yes, it was these three guys, and they were leaps and bounds, worlds, eons, light years ahead of Quentin Johnston, obviously, right? I mean, what? Well, sorry, excuse me. Obvious to me, right? It wasn't obvious to most, obvious to me. Okay, so that's the difference, right? And the same is true now when you have to compare C.J. Stroud to Justin Fields, where Justin Fields was clear in a different tier. Like we talked about, he's mobile. He's a big-time playmaker, 40 points per game. This is in his range of outcomes. Now we have to start reassessing who is higher in Dynasty, C.J. Stroud or Justin Fields. It's now a debate.
Yep.
Right? Fields has sunk that far, and Stroud is moving up. Right? So that's it's not, I don't think that it's time yet. I think that this is a great matchup for Fields this week. So we're going to see. This is a big week. This is a giant week.
It is.
We are looking at a giant week for Justin Fields' dynasty value, as well as a giant week for CJ Stroud. We could be a week away from that shift because Stroud faces the Steelers, and that's a soft secondary. So if Stroud goes nuclear and Justin Fields struggles against the Broncos, don't be surprised by the move.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
don't be surprised when these are the ships that are passing in the night. Same is true for Zay Flowers and Jackson Smith-Njigba. But also, it's not far off from Jackson Smith-Njigba getting passed by Jordan Addison. Okay, so next week we've got the Vikings are at the Panthers. Okay, that's not a great matchup for Addison. That game has only a 45.5 point total. So not a lot of points going to be scored in that game. But there could be, right? Where the Seahawks are at the Giants. That's a 47 point total. So the total's higher and the implied points for Seattle are higher. So we'll be monitoring that situation very closely. If Jackson Smith-Njigba continues to struggle and on the road at Carolina, Jordan Addison is productive once again, this is a conversation.
Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right. I mean, and you're right to, bring all that up as we're having this conversation about shifting values and taking in what we're seeing, right? It's absolutely true that Zay Flowers is doing Zay Flowers things. And it's fair to point out Jordan Addison is also producing. That's a fair point. TJ Hawkinson is there. Justin Jefferson's there. So, yeah, it's fair.
Jameis Winston is now the starting quarterback in New Orleans. Upgrade for Chris Olave?
I don't know if it's an upgrade. I don't necessarily think it's a huge downgrade either. I mean, Carr was injured in the third quarter. Before the injury, Olave was targeted 6 times, caught 5 balls, 58 yards. After the injury, he was targeted 5 times, 3 receptions, 46 yards. So I don't think it hurts Olave too much, but I don't necessarily think it's an upgrade. He was targeted around the same amount of times, even when they were trying to salt away the clock, or at least they should have been. They should have been in that mode. But so yeah, I don't really think it's an upgrade per se. But what do you think?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I think historically, Derek Carr has been a check-down quarterback, and historically, Jameis Winston has been an air-it-out, go-for-broke, prolific YOLO passer. Right? This is what he does. He pushes the ball downfield, and he does not care. Right? One guy is a YOLO downfield passer. The other guy has been a game manager, but he's been a game manager that is willing to at least, go down the seam. Derek Carr does not like to throw to the boundary. Okay? So this is where there's an advantage to having Jameis Winston in that he will spray the ball deep all over the field. Okay? So for that reason, I think this is an upgrade. Anytime you have one of these, what would you call Jeff George?
Oh, just a gunslinger. Right?
I would call him a gunslinger. Wouldn't that? Isn't that
reckless
the word?
Abandon.
I was hoping you would say gunslinger. That was a little quiz. That was a little pop quiz, a little podcast or pop quiz. You passed.
Okay.
You passed,
cool.
right?
All right.
So Jameis Winston has more gunslinger tendencies, right? He's got more of that Jeff George in him than Derek Carr, and that's all I care about. I don't care about interceptions. That's all I care about. In fact, I want them to throw some interceptions, quarterbacks throw interceptions once in a while. That leads to more negative game scripts, which leads to more throwing. So I believe this is an upgrade for Chris Olave. I'm excited for it. I know that Jameis Winston came into the game and they immediately stopped scoring points. I get it. That happened this week, but I think moving forward, we're going to be very happy. If we have Olave, be very happy with Jameis Winston. Can you believe, though, if you look at Olave, that who's producing fantasy points from this 2022 class? It's Olave, it's George Pickens, and it's Romeo Doubs. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Romeo Doubs is outscoring Treylon Burks, Drake London, Jameson Williams, obviously. Even Garrett Wilson. It's like Garrett Wilson and Romeo Doubs, like they're close.
Yeah.
Their season-long fantasy production is close. That is wild because Romeo Doubs isn't even that good. Like, I know he had a diving catch and it was spectacular, but he's not that fast. He doesn't have the greatest hands. He does nothing particularly well. He's just good. He's good enough, right? He's very Joshua Palmer, Romeo Doubs. And when there's injuries in front of you in the depth chart, like there is now with Joshua Palmer, then a guy like Romeo Doubs is going to give you 5 catches for 70 yards and a touchdown. That's what he's going to be able to give you. That's what Josh Palmer is going to give you some weeks, right? The bigger question is, how is it possible that what was sold as one of the great wide receiver classes of our time, where first-round picks like Christian Watson, George Pickens, Sky Moore were slipping into the mid-second round just because there were so many great receivers, the NFL couldn't accommodate all these guys. So many studs. Look at Jahan Dotson. So many great receivers in this class. We don't have enough teams to draft them all. And then you look up, and literally from the first round, there's one guy that's doing a goddamn thing. There's, from the second round, one guy that's doing a goddamn thing. Nothing from Wan'Dale Robinson. Tyquan Thornton's been on the IR. Sky Moore has been a disappointment. I thought we would see more from Sky Moore, but it's clear that Rashee Rice is ascending to that wide receiver 1 spot. He's been more efficient with his targets, similar target share, more efficiency from Rashee Rice, the rookie, as opposed to Sky Moore, the sophomore. So it's looking more and more like this rookie class with a bunch of seniors and a bunch of guys that graded out lower than the receiving class from 2022, that if you go down the board, look at Jaden Reed, look at Marvin Mims, look at Zay Flowers, of course, look at Jordan Addison. You go down the board, Puka Nacua, right? All these players that are playing like we thought the 2022 class would be playing. Like this rookie class is greatly exceeding the performances and the production of the 2022 class, which was sold as one of the great of all time, which is just fascinating.
It is. And I remember clear back then that Treylon Burks was very early in the process was many people's 101, like the first.
Oh yeah. Fusuvu. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who. Should I know who Fusuvu? Not to derail this, I don't know who Fusuvu is.
Fusuvu is a Twitter film grinder.
Okay.
Right. So he breaks down film on Twitter, and then he'll time the guys. So he'll give you their 40 times, but not the 40 time from the combine, like how fast they are, their game speed, because he will measure their speed in the game.
Okay.
Right. And then he will break down their performances in the game. And for some reason, he was fascinated by Quentin Johnston's yards after the catch per route run or some esoteric metric that no one cares about. And it turns out predicts nothing.
I see. Gotcha. Thank you for that. So I'll have to look him up. But yeah, I think you nailed it. Like Chris Olave is proving to be the best receiver in this class. I was kind of skeptical. I mean, it kind of sucks because we'll never see what this season could have been with Aaron Rodgers for Garrett Wilson. Like I was not very high on that situation. I didn't think that Rodgers could elevate him past like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Chris Olave, like, and Devontae Adams. Like many people were drafting Garrett Wilson like early in the redraft season. I didn't think that, but we'll never be able to see it, and we'll never be able to know until maybe next year. I don't know, but I'm still skeptical. So I think
Garrett Wilson's phenomenal talent. I do
too. Yeah, I do too.
I think he's a phenomenal talent. But when you have one of the slowest playing quarterbacks in the league, who's bringing over a bunch of his blankies from his previous team, to draft that guy over Devontae Adams, who has a functional NFL quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, never made any sense.
Yeah, I call them the Green Bay Dust Bunnies, bringing over Lazard and, Randall Cobb. And like,
Yeah.
it's kind of what old people like. They like comfort, they like what they're familiar with, right? They like their routine. And definitely there's no more of a routine receiver than Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard. I mean, that's the very definition of this is what I'm comfortable with. Garrett Wilson, you'll just have to find your way within this, which is why I was skeptical, and many people thought I was crazy for it, but we'll never know. Like, we'll never, unfortunately.
No,
Because now,
apparently you were right. Because I asked this question on social media when they were like, how's Kenneth Gainwell looking now after week 2? And I was like, wait a second. Wait, you're victory lapping injuries? What's going on? Really?
yeah,
That's kind of mean-spirited and lame. I didn't think that people were doing that on social media anymore. I didn't get the memo that's a thing now. But apparently being right just because an injury happened counts as being right and worthy of a victory lap, apparently. So feel free. Okay. Certainly, I'm not celebrating the loss of Aaron Rodgers in any way, and I love Garrett Wilson. I really do. He is an elite talent, and he hasn't moved much on our Dynasty rankings because that's the core assessment of Garrett Wilson is that you're going to want him in Dynasty. Trust me. This is no one's questioning that. Like that's not a question. It is interesting how the sentiments have changed about what you can celebrate now. Like, guy gets injured, your guy comes in, and you can celebrate that. 5 years ago, that was frowned upon, but not anymore.
Yeah. As much as everybody knows I'm not the biggest Aaron Rodgers fan in the world, of his darkness retreats, but I will never celebrate or, victory lap an injury ever, even to the player that I despise the most, because, he still has an ownership. He still has a stake in the Bears.
You can't despise him as much as you used to. Dude, Aaron Rodgers was a total douchebag for 10 years and somehow turned his personality inside out. He became a charming, down-to-earth individual. This was not what I saw coming. Anyone that knew him 10 years ago would not recognize him. In fact, if you met him 10 years ago and then you met him a month ago, you would think that it was like a Mission Impossible situation where he was wearing one of those masks, one of those rubber masks that was the exact face of Aaron Rodgers and had mimicked the body and the cadence and the walk and the posture, but it's actually not Aaron Rodgers. You wouldn't believe it. You would think there was someone wearing a mask. It was not possible that a person can change their personality that much. But he did it. He did it. It's one of the greatest feats, underreported feats in the history of sports, is how Aaron Rodgers went from the douchiest of the douche to a cool guy. That fucking happened, man.
It did?
Yes! I swear. Listen, there's no one that has more of an incentive to diminish Aaron Rodgers and criticize him as I do based on what happened with Jeff Janis in Green Bay. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forgive that situation. I'll never forgive Aaron Rodgers for that. I'll acknowledge he's become a cool guy, but I'm not going to forgive him for ruining Jeff Janis's career, crushing this man's soul. That's not something I'm going to forgive, but I will acknowledge, he went from a guy that I thought was loathsome to a guy that I would love to hang out with. That fucking happened.
Well, I guess I'll probably never know if I want to hang out with him or not, but that's it. He still has an ownership stake in the Bears. I think him and McCaskey still meet, every other Tuesday.
Wait, is that allowed?
No, he owns the Bears. He did the thing. You remember? He owns them. Oh, you don't remember?
Wait, Aaron Rodgers has an equity stake in the Bears?
No, he said it to the fans like in his last year in Green Bay. He's like, "I own you. I effing own you."
Oh,
okay. So that's my bad.
Wow. That was an elaborate joke by you.
I was trying,
No, but doesn't Tom Brady own a stake in a team?
Yeah, the Raiders, right? He doesn't he own a
right.
small
Okay,
part of the
so
Raiders?
yeah, it's not the craziest thing. Okay, I knew
No,
that there
you're
was
right.
a quarterback who had a stake in one of the teams from that era, but it was Tom Brady, not Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think, that an active player would be allowed to have a stake in another team. That can't be allowed.
I would think not. Yeah, but
in the chat,
anyway.
there's a note in the chat that Aaron Rodgers passed his ownership of the Bears to Jordan Love.
Okay.
Oh, he got you. The chat.
To be a Bears fan. It's
tough life.
Hey, it just the defeats just make the victories all that sweeter. So someday,
really though, does it?
Someday, Matt. Someday the Bears are going to win a Super Bowl, and I'm not going to know what to do with myself. I'm not going to. Someday, I might be 90. I don't know, but you got to keep. That's the beauty of this whole thing, man. That's the beauty of it. Is the pain, like the suffering and the pain.
Though? Is that the beauty of it? I don't know. I don't think that's the beauty of it. I'm suffering.
Yeah.
With watching Jordan Love be exactly 1-for-1, exactly what I wanted Kenneth Pickett Sr. to be. Everything I thought Kenneth Pickett would be this year is what we're getting from Jordan Love, all the way down to the tactical scrambling, the hero ball, the come from behind wins, everything that I remember seeing from Kenneth Pickett at Pitt and what I expected to see this year in Pittsburgh is what we're getting from Jordan Love. And it breaks my heart. That kills me, man.
So 53% completion is the new benchmark. You look at the stats and it's, Jordan Love has 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. They lost. Atlanta came back on him. Just last week. I know the Saints. He beat the Saints. Okay, but the week before, 151 passing yards in a game they were winning by 12 points in the fourth quarter. Just 1 week ago, he kind of blew it, didn't he? And now he's the hero.
Yeah, that's what Kenneth Pickett is. That's what we wanted from Kenneth Pickett. Of course, Kenneth Pickett is going to blow games and then be the hero. I'm just saying that's what I wanted from Kenneth Pickett. I'm not saying that either of these guys are franchise quarterbacks for the next 10 years, but it is annoying. It's really annoying that the guy was like, well, based on ADP arbitrage, I'd much rather have Pickett. He's a mobile quarterback, and he's going to be coming from behind, and it's going to be great. I would rather have him than Jordan Love. Jordan Love's going earlier, but it turns out Jordan Love was going exactly where Jordan Love should have been drafted, and then Kenneth Pickett was going exactly where Kenneth Pickett should have been drafted, and that's annoying. But what about Pickens? Pickens looks good. But this is in the absence of Deontay Johnson, so I'm a little bit worried that what we're seeing from Pickens is fake.
We'll see. I think the 23 targets, the 238 receiving yards. I think he's really the tape. He checks out. I think I'm still really bullish on Pickens. I still am. Even when and if Deontay Johnson comes back, I think Pickens is really good. So I like both Pickens and Kenny Pickett both. They've also had to play against the 49ers defense and the Browns defense. I think those are 2 elite defenses. I know they had the game against the Raiders.
Well, he had the big play against the Browns where he had the 60-yard touchdown running catch.
I know. That's even more impressive, right? The game against the Raiders, Pickett, about like you would expect, 16 for 28, a couple passing touchdowns. So I'm still, I still think Pickett is better than Love. I'm still pretty confident in saying that.
Good. I'm glad you're saying that. I need that. This is what I need to hear. Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah.
How much? Who's better? Who's a better receiver? Because I'm seeing, 4 catches on 6 targets from Pickens last week. That's a very Drake London stat line, right? Mm-hmm. 6 targets, 4 catches, 75 yards. That's very Drake London. So who would you rather have in Dynasty, Pickens or London?
Oh, I think it's Pickens. There's so much more certainty with the quarterback. It's been just a few games against tough competition, so I think Kenny Pickett is going to be just fine. I think by the end of the season, Pickett, like Jordan Love's accuracy is still a problem.
It is a problem, but I need Kenneth Pickett to start running more.
Yeah,
I
think
need to
he
see
will.
more rushing. I hope so. But I'm not running out to pick him up in single quarterback leagues. I was hoping by this point everyone would be picking him up in single quarterback leagues, but now that's actually C.J. Stroud. The one guy everyone's running to pick up in single quarterback leagues is C.J. Stroud, and good for him, man. Good for him. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs, 17 rush attempts last week. That's pretty cool. So who do you think is more fantasy points this year? Right, speaking of like competition for the Bears, right? The Lions are a better team than the Bears. The Packers, we've talked about, they're a better team than the Bears. Jahmyr Gibbs or Devon Achane, who scores more fantasy points this year?
See, the problem that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have is David Montgomery. Like David Montgomery, before he was injured, was getting the majority of the catches. He won't get any of the targets, which is a problem. Gibbs was getting most of the targets, but if we're talking about the carries inside the 10, inside the red zone, those high value carries, those were going to David Montgomery, and I think they're going to ramp Gibbs up as the year goes on. I mean, they would almost have to with as much as they've invested in him, and I think he's really, really good. I want to say Gibbs. But I think my answer right now is Gibbs. But God, Devon Achane in that one game he played in looked really, really, really good.
So your final answer is Gibbs then. That's your final answer?
If you're making me choose, my answer is Gibbs because we know what the role is going to be, and it's going to be ramped up. It's going to be ramped up as the season goes along. And while a 4-touchdown game for Devon Achane is great, we know Jeff Wilson's coming back. We know Raheem Mostert's going to be involved. Salvin Ahmed is there. I don't know if he's going to do much of anything, but
what are you talking about? So your final answer is Jahmyr Gibbs?
Yeah. What's wrong with is yours Achane?
So more fantasy points this year, Devon Achane or Jahmyr Gibbs? You're picking Gibbs, right?
Yeah.
It's Achane.
Okay.
It's clearly Achane. I don't know what? Did you not were you not watching football this weekend?
I was. I get it, but they're not going to play the Broncos every week. They got to play the Bills, and they got to play.
And he's only going to get a bigger and bigger share of the opportunity share in game neutral situations. I know that the game neutral opportunity share still going to Raheem Mostert for now. Another movement in the Dynasty rankings that is breaking my heart is seeing Brian Robinson ahead of Antonio Gibson.
Oh,
so that one hurts.
Yeah,
that one really hurts,
hurt.
Right? That's up there with what's been going on with the demise of Rachaad Bateman. So now we're just moving on. Now we got to get him out of here. We got to helicopter this man off the mountain and get him somewhere else. Think about Miles Sanders, right? Miles Sanders, last year he was like top 5 in the league in rushing yards, but yet didn't produce a damn thing for fantasy. It's like, get him out of there. Get him to a team that appreciates him. They're turning the backfield over to Kenneth Gainwell. Antonio Gibson, he needs a new home. Where do you want him to go next year? Think about the teams around the league. Where do you want him to go?
I think the absolute slam dunk. If the Chiefs want a Jerick McKinnon replacement, I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs with Antonio Gibson makes me very, very excited.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Just makes too much sense. You what if you combined Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon into one guy? That would be Antonio Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would be fine. I would be fine with Pacheco in like a breather back roll, a hammer roll. Be fine with that as long as we get Gibson in a McKinnon plus role. That would be awesome. That would be perfect. I'm in for that. I'm in for that. What about Jonathan Taylor? Where do you want Jonathan Taylor going?
Oh my God. I mean, this must have been the worst week ever for Jonathan, because the Miami Dolphins were the team that he was rumored to be linked to. And now there's absolutely no way that the Dolphins have to be thrilled with their backfield. They have no need for Jonathan Taylor anymore. So
they do though. They know that Jonathan Taylor would be a massive upgrade. Yes.
Okay.
Imagine everything you're seeing from, especially Mostert. Mm-hmm. Imagine that guy is Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I think you could let your imagination run wild on that. I think one of the problems for Jonathan Taylor is Zach Moss. Zach Moss getting 122 yards in a win over the Ravens with Gardner Minshew under center. That's worst case scenario for Jonathan Taylor. At this point, isn't Jonathan Taylor broken? Doesn't he have to report and be like, yeah, my ankle's fine, actually. Can we let's move on. Let's get on with it.
I think that's his only option, really. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to meet the Colts asking price of what was it, a first rounder or multiple picks? Like, that was always never going to happen. So,
right. I mean, to see these Dolphins running backs go off for over 300 yards and 17 touchdowns, and then at this exact same time, right? The 1:00 games. He's watching football. He's watching the Red Zone channel, and all he's seeing is Zach Moss, Devon Achane, and Raheem Mostert. That's all. Yeah. It's just one after another. And at some point at halftime, yeah, Jonathan Taylor's calling his agent. He's like, "Get me back in. This is ridiculous."
Exactly. That's his leverage is. If he had any leverage at all, it's gone. He had hardly any, if none, really, to begin with. Yeah, that's really his only option. So, like, that was the two worst case scenarios happened at the same time. So that must have been a real tough week for Jonathan Taylor.
And I hope we see him maybe this week.
I do.
This week, maybe he reports. It's possible. I don't know. Maybe it would be good. He's not going to have a full opportunity share. He's still is even when he reports, it's going to be Taylor and Moss sharing the backfield for at least a few weeks. This is it's going to be a lost season for Jonathan Taylor. It's so demoralizing this is happening. He's so young. What is he? 24 years old. This is his ultimate year of football. If you're a running back, the age apex for a running back is age 24. And Jonathan Taylor is 24.7 years old. And he's not playing. This is a mistake, man. This is just a mistake. This is a mistake. Right? And again, I'm not here just to like victory lap, right? So it's like, well, you better be careful. Better be careful about your victory lapping of Quentin Johnston. No, I'm not going to be careful, right? I don't care how many routes open up in this offense. Quentin Johnston's ability to separate and then squeeze the football deep is not existent, and I have to see it before I'll believe it. And until then, I'm going to victory lap. What I'm not going to victory lap as hard is, and as vigorously, is Zach Charbonnet. Because the underlying usage of Zach Charbonnet increased last week, but the underlying usage of Quentin Johnston did not. Okay? So, for no reason other than his own ability, because Kenneth Walker is healthy, for the first time, Zach Charbonnet ran more routes out of the backfield than Kenneth Walker. That's not good if you're a Kenneth Walker fan. Now, Kenneth Walker is just a breakaway run specialist. So he's going to break long runs in the running game and in the receiving game, and he's going to put up 30 fantasy points because he's Kenneth Walker, right? Mm-hmm. The Doak Walker Award winner, Kenneth Walker. But if they're going to make Zach Charbonnet a fixture in the passing game, then I'm going to be careful about fading him, about victory lapping, the decision to draft a Roschon Johnson over a Zach Charbonnet, fighting with all those analysts this summer. I'm still proud of it, but I am quietly acknowledging that there's something there with Zach Charbonnet as a receiver, and there's going to be weeks where he goes out and he has 5 catches. That's going to happen. And he's going to have some big weeks as a breather back with the upside in the receiving game. I'm just preparing my body and my soul for that eventuality, knowing that doesn't change the fact that Roschon Johnson's a better player and is going to have even more opportunity in front of him this year because Kenneth Walker is so many miles, eons, light years ahead of Khalil Herbert.
Yeah. No, I think you said it. I think...
Well, it wasn't a question, really. I was just explaining that I'm not ready to just, throw dirt on Zach Charbonnet. I'm not doing it. Won't do it. Quentin Johnson, Zach Charbonnet, very different players, very different situations. One is earning opportunities on his own without injuries ahead of him. That's a big difference than what we're seeing with Quentin Johnston.
Oh yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think the good news if you have Kenneth Walker is he is getting targets. I know that this week was the week Charbonnet ran more routes. It was kind of a blowout situation, so that there is that. But you're right, though. I mean, they drafted him in the second round. They have a plan for him, right? They're going to use him. And it's going to, Kenneth Walker is still a really good fantasy asset, and he was being discounted too much in the offseason because of Zach Charbonnet. But you do have to realize, there's a happy medium here that they are going to utilize this player and his strengths are catching the ball out of the backfield. So that does cap Kenneth Walker a little bit, but Kenneth Walker was being drafted way too low. So if you drafted him at his ADP, I think you're going to hit on that.
What happened to the Giants?
Oh man,
what happened? Because this is one where no one saw the Texans coming, and I certainly did not see the collapse of the Giants coming. I thought this was a team that was in the midst of an ascendance, and now it's like, when is Dayball going to get fired? But it's just a great reminder, right? That this guy fixed Josh Allen, and he fixed Daniel Jones, and he can't fail. He deserves all the credit until, whoops, team's no good, and he gets fired. This is a tale as old as time. Everyone that's celebrating Mike McDaniel needs to just turn your gaze toward New York for a moment and remember that this was what everyone was saying about Brian Daboll a year ago.
Yeah, no, sometimes as a play caller, I mean, it's kind of like in baseball. Like you might have a good fastball, but you need some good off-speed pitches, right? You need, the NFL is going to adjust to what you do well. So it's all a matter of being coming up with schemes to counter their schemes. And it really feels like, they're struggling hard in the first half scoring points. And Brian Daboll was, turned Josh Allen around or was the offensive coordinator there when Josh Allen was there. And that's how he got this job. Right. And the Buffalo offense ascended under his watch. Right. But we'll see. It looks really, really bad right now. But the good news is Daniel Jones is still running around and putting up fantasy points, especially in that Arizona game, right, where they had to come all the way from behind. So I guess that's good news for Daniel Jones, but we'll see. We'll see. In fairness to them, they did have to play Dallas when Dallas was fully healthy. and Dallas put just the smackdown on them. And, the 49ers in week 3 is a tough match. We'll see, but I think we're going to find out a lot in the coming weeks if Brian Daboll is long for this league, because as a coach, sometimes you can come in and have a scheme that works initially, but then the NFL adjusts to you. And so being the offensive coordinator is a lot different than being a head coach. So we'll see.
I've heard, Seth, that it's a make or miss league. That's what I've heard. It's a make or miss league. And yes, they did have a difficult schedule to start, though they haven't faced the Eagles yet. Yep. So still haven't faced this team yet. That's later in the season. Home game against the Seahawks. This is it.
Yep.
Like this is such a huge week. I am so excited for this week. We got Patriots, Cowboys. Okay? We've got the Bucks at the Saints. We've got the Seahawks at the Giants. We've got so many must-win game for the Chargers at home against the Raiders. We've got just, this Broncos-Bears game. Right? We got the immovable object against the resistible force.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So this is a fascinating week. Detroit's at Green Bay. There's just so much get-right game for Joe Burrow at Tennessee. This is the week. There's no bye weeks yet. This is going to be the most exciting week of NFL action until December. This is incredibly exciting. You're going to have a potential blowout. You've got Arizona going to San Francisco, who are 2 touchdown favorites, minus 14, right? And, looking at Arizona, whenever I look at Arizona, I think of Michael Wilson. He's the only player I really care about on Arizona is Michael Wilson. My 2 favorite stashes at running back, it's Rico Dowdle, because he's a 1-for-1 handcuff, one of the few true 1-for-1 handcuffs with all-purpose talent. And Michael Wilson, who is the only true alpha archetype wide receiver on this team, right? It's all 170-pound receivers and Michael Wilson. And Kyler Murray will return at some point. So I'm excited about those 2 guys for stashes. Who are your favorite stashes? Give me a couple other stashes.
First of all, Michael Wilson is a great stash. I think he's my most heavily owned player right now. But some other ones, I'm just going to give you a good list of them here because these are the players that I want in Dynasty.
Dynasty and seasonal leagues, both.
Both? Okay.
Oh, yeah, both, yeah.
Okay.
Because everyone Michael Wilson's not available in Dynasty. Everyone's rostered him. But I'm just saying, if you're in a seasonal league, high-stakes league, Michael Wilson is going to have weeks. Trust me. You love what this rookie class is doing right now? Well, Michael Wilson was one of the better receivers in this class.
Mm-hmm. I think you got to have your I completely agree. I think you have to have your eye on Keaton Mitchell. Why not? He's got 4.37 speed. That kind of like that Devon A-Chain archetype in Baltimore, where there's a lot of uncertainty at the running back spot. Justice Hill was banged up this last week. I think Trey Sermon is a guy. I know it's boring, but he's the backup to Zach Moss right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty in that backfield. I think he's a good stash. Also, Elijah Dotson, and I know this seems counterintuitive because Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller are ahead of him on the depth chart, but both of those running backs were terrible last week in an absolutely smash spot for them, especially Joshua Kelly. So Dotson's intriguing, and I think a guy worth keeping an eye on in deeper leagues. Calvin Austin at the wide receiver position.
Now we're talking.
Calvin Austin, I think.
Now we're talking.
Could have a really good role in this Pittsburgh offense that I think is still really good. And deep cut, right? And you talked about Michael Wilson. I think and I know I have my eye on Dynasty all the time. In a Superflex Dynasty league, I think you got to go out and get Tyson Bagent. I think you got to keep him if you got the roster space for him because I think there's a real world where he's the Bears starting quarterback mid-season. So I think just go get him if you got the roster space, especially in a super flex.
Well, Derek Carr's already injured.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson's already injured. Got injured running the ball. So it makes sense. The Badgett, there could be an injury, there could be a benching. There's a bunch of different ways Badgett gets in there.
Mm-hmm.
Would you trade Devon Achane straight up right now in a seasonal league?
Okay.
For Jonathan Taylor?
I don't think I would.
Wow.
I don't think I would.
Wow.
Because even when he comes back, I mean, you said it earlier, I think he's going to have to work his way into, and if Zach Moss is playing well, they don't want to mess with that.
You got Anthony Richardson vulturing touchdowns.
Yeah, and he's not going to really probably get many targets because of that. Like Anthony Richardson's going to run around. I mean, Devon, I don't think I would. It's crazy where we start the year and where we end up, like at different parts of the season.
This could very well be a lost season for Jonathan Taylor. In fact, it's trending that way. And so you get this gift of Devon Achane. You're just trading him because there's this guy with this well-known brand, this Heisman Trophy candidate, right? Superstar, All-American, 2,000-yard rusher, right? But what is he right now? Right now, he's not playing. And when he does come back, it's to low target volume and stolen touchdowns on one of the league's lowest scoring offenses. That's what he's coming back to. So it just feels weird to say Achane, who's not even the starter, that a guy that's a rookie who's not even the starter, you would prefer over whatever second half of production that Jonathan Taylor could give you, which could be great. But given his situation, given the fact that he's been out of football, not playing, not practicing for 9 months, he's going to get reacclimated. It's going to be a process to get reacclimated. Then once he is reacclimated, he's in a situation that's going to minimize his fantasy scoring, whereas Devon Achane is the perfect running back for currently what everyone would say is the perfect system for scoring fantasy points right now in the NFL. This is why in seasonal leagues, situation trumps ability in many cases, where I'd rather have the opportunity over the efficiency. But the thing is, Achane's giving you both. He's giving you extreme efficiency, and all that he has in front of him is more opportunity to come. And he's healthy, and he's playing, and he wants to be on a football team right now.
Yeah.
So it's actually an easy call. It on its face, because it was a question from the chat, it seemed like a great question. Right? And I put it up there. I said, oh, we should ask this question. This is a great question. Scott Kenneth asked a great question. And then now that we've talked it through, I've realized Scott Kmet's an idiot. Scott Kmet asked an obvious question that didn't even deserve a response. It was such a stupid question. Of course it's Achane. You wouldn't consider Jonathan Taylor. How dare you even ask that? You should be embarrassed.
Yeah, and there's also a world where, I mean, what's the percentage of possibility that Jonathan Taylor even plays this year?
That's what I'm saying.
Like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Give us a truther guy for Dynasty. You love Dynasty. You're the host of the Dynasty Roundtable show. Check it out. Subscribe to the Dynasty Roundtable. Go to any podcatcher. Get the Dynasty Roundtable show. It's one of our many podcasts. Seth and Matt and everyone that joins that show is members of the underworld, unite to talk Dynasty. It's a great show. You got to tune in. Dynasty Roundtable. Give us a guy you're truthering for deep, deep, deep on your taxi squad.
Well, a guy that I haven't mentioned that I was a huge fan of, and I'm not willing to take the L yet, is Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. I know he was drafted late. I know he's a wide receiver, but he has seen the field. At some point, we know this is a Texans offense that's ascending. You want pieces of this. We're talking a deep, deep cut here.
This is good. No,
right?
This is good. Texans. If you say Texans, I'm interested.
Hey, like there's a possibility that Xavier Hutchinson finds a way in a role on this team, right? And so I'm that's one of my stashes. I already talked about Tyson Bagent. I think in a super flex, especially if he's probably sitting out there in just about every league, right? I would imagine, and I think that's a stash just in case, especially if you have Justin Fields, right? That's an insurance policy, at least a small one.
He was the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl.
I'm a huge when the Bears, I signed him as a UDFA. I was very happy. I thought that was a great signing.
Could be the next Tony Romo.
Could be. We'll see. That could be it could be the solution. We'll see. So yeah, those are a couple. Xavier Hutchinson, and then I do have to bring this up because I'm on the mind of Mansion. Mike Gesicki is the player that I wrote my very first article for Player Profile about 3 or 4 years ago about Mike Gesicki and how I thought he could ascend to be the tight end 1 in fantasy football. And overall, yes, overall. This was back when he was playing with the Dolphins, okay? And he had some weeks. Where I think I looked up at one point a couple years ago when he was the tight end 3 overall and scoring. We know the tight end positions all over the place. And I mean, I think he's somebody who is maybe available for cheap. Look at what Hunter Henry's doing in this offense. Clearly, Hunter Henry's the priority target over Mike Gesicki. But if something happens to Hunter Henry, you probably want to have Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki is getting targeted in this offense too. So those are some deep truther cuts of players that I have on my rosters that I think could see a good role in the future, and maybe even this year. So,
and just to wrap it up, you are the head of our YouTube channel. You are head editor of our articles. You are a true sort of atlas of the underworld, holding up a lot of this content, right? Theo gets to sit back, and Theo gets to game plan, and Theo gets to chit chat with all these creators out there, and book all these guests, and he does a great job, right? He's an ideas guy, but you are the guy that actually makes things happen. Right. You're really, I believe, if I had to classify you as what your role is, you are the heartbeat of Player Profiler. Just want to say that to you right now. That's where you and you weren't there a year ago, right? You said, hey, I have an English background. I like editing. I can help edit these articles. And I said, great. A year later, you're the fucking heartbeat of the operation.
Yeah, I'm honored that you would trust me with this role. I mean, it's a role that I work in fantasy football. It's amazing. Like the people that I get to work with, the emails that I get to send all these creators, it's unbelievable. I will say my partner in crime, some people think we're brothers. Jason Alwine is, if I'm the heartbeat, he's also like a part of that. Like he's huge.
There's definitely he's the
other
lungs,
heartbeat.
or he's the lungs or whatever. Yeah, Jason also scheduled to be on the show this year. So it was a big priority for me to have you and Jason on the show this year during the season, just because you guys mean a lot to what we do.
Yeah, and it means a lot that you say that. It's like it's crazy to think about. I don't know if I want to go down this road too much, but like just 3 years ago, I started as a game charter, and I tell people this that I meet, in interviews. Like we get producers coming on, clip video editors, and I tell them I was right where you were, 3 years ago as a game charter. And it's crazy to think that, I am where I am. And it's really, you gave me the opportunity, and, I'd like to think I made the most of it. And here we are. And I couldn't be more thrilled to be a part of what we're doing, because Player Profiler, and I know, I say it all the time on my show, is the best fantasy football website in the world. I believe that with all my heart. And it's my pleasure to help bring the best content possible to the audience, and that's what it's all about. So it's my pleasure to do that for you, for the people, and it means a lot. So anyway,
You're the best, man.
right back at you.
For tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you, allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.